because of the wall behind Rose and Hornberger, it looks like they're on a split screen. For a minute, I thought they were.
It really does look like this.
All right, guys, we are live.
How did they do that?
Delegate episode, we are live right now.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Education Subcommittee, everybody. Let's get started. We're picking up where we left off on House Bill 522. We're gonna have Alistair just go through the last section that we went through just briefly, Alistair, and then we're gonna pick up with Delegate Rose's question.
Okay, so last we left off, Last we left off, we were discussing the requirements that the school resource officers and the school security employees will have to have under this bill as amended. And that would include that for a school resource officer, that the school resource officer has an exemplary disciplinary record, is approved by the principal, and meets any other criteria that the center adopts. And for the school security employee, they would have to pass a background check and be approved by the principal.
Okay, Delegate Rose, you had a question?
Okay, thank you. So what I was starting to ask is, I guess it's a two-part question because I had a little bit more time to read through the reprint. So with the hiring process, our sheriff goes through quite an extensive background check, polygraph. They do a psych evaluation and all of that. So is this going to be additional screening that the SROs have to go through? That's my first question.
Yes, there would be these additional, for a school resource officer, they would have to have an exemplary disciplinary record in addition to that, which involves no dispositions of cases involving excessive force or administrative hearings.
Okay, so I guess if there was some complaint and they accepted, basically, you know, like in a court case, and I'm not a lawyer, if they came to an agreement and they just accepted, okay, well, there really wasn't evidence that I used excessive force, but I'll just accept whatever the disciplinary action would be, does that then preclude them from being an SRF?
I don't think so, because I think that that would not be a finding through an administrative hearing. If it's, I mean, I think it depends on the exact circumstances you're talking about, but I think under this language, it would have to have a formal administrative hearing process that results like a court judgment in a finding of excessive force. So if it was like something between the officer and the local law enforcement agency that didn't go through that process, they would not be prohibited through this.
Okay, all right. I still have a problem with the extra screening once they've already gone. As I mentioned, you know, in Carroll County, I just spoke with our sheriff, and I mean, our officers, when we hire them, they go through an extremely extensive process to be screened, to be, you know, proper law enforcement officers, and to a very high cost. So this would be an additional cost to our sheriff's office, and you know, we're already you know, strapped for money. So okay, and we're going to go through each section. So I have other questions for further down. So that's it for now from me. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Delegate Guyton, did you have a question, or your question was answered?
Thank you. My question may be for a different part of the bill as well. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. Delegate Plogovic-Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, something in that exchange just prompted me to realize, does this definition actually need to include some other things in terms of exemplary disciplinary record? To me, it feels like we should also be excluding people who would have had, you know, some kind of internal action or something that might not have resulted in the exact standard that's being described here. There might be other scenarios. I don't know how to define those, so that I'm not. But
can you guys hear me? Am I going in and out?
I can hear you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Delegate, I think that, you know, as Delegate Rose indicated, that there will be a thorough background check. I think for this piece, though, we want to make sure that there was no findings of excessive force being used. I think, just to get to Delegate Rose's point as well, that we want the best of the best to be in our schools protecting our students. And if you are found to have used excessive force, I think just for me, I wouldn't want that officer. They could have, if they were found guilty of such or whatever have you, then they shouldn't be in our schools. We should have the best of the best in our schools. Excessive force is illegal and something that shouldn't happen. And we should make sure we have the best of the best in our schools. But Delegate Plogovich-Carr, I think you bring up a great point about other pieces that should be in here, but I don't think we should list every single piece that should be in there. There are background checks that are conducted on SROs as well as school security personnel. Delegate Smith. I don't think we can hear you, Delegate Smith.
I think she's traveling right now.
Yeah.
Should we continue and wait for the good
Yeah,
delegate?
Talking on mute. I apologize. I'm having a full conversation, not realizing I was on mute. So I wanted to apologize for that. Sorry, Mr. Vice Chair. But there was some late breaking awareness that was made to me from the city schools. They're very supportive of this bill. They just had some concerns just because we have sworn police, dedicated Baltimore City police, school police that has like a centralized command that assigns officers, and just wanted to think if there was any accommodation that could be made versus having the principals assigned the police officers to the schools, just because the structure is just fundamentally, a bit different than what is normal in the rest of the state. Just something to consider. And I apologize for the late breaking awareness of this, but I just wanted to make sure I lifted that up.
Yeah, Delegate, we understand that. We haven't gotten to that point yet.
My apologies. So sorry.
I'm sure we'll have a robust discussion on that at some point. But we are on one particular section of the bill, which is dealing with the use of excessive force and the types of trainings that occur. Delegate Ebersol, did you take a hand down until we go to the next session?
I did until we get, I was going to comment on Delegate Smith's commentary, but we're not there yet.
Got it. Thank you very much. Okay, cool. Any other questions on what Alistair discussed so far? And we'll get to the other points. All right, Alistair, let's go to the next section, please.
Okay, so the next section stipulates the some new requirements that school resource officers must meet going forward. The first thing is that a school resource officer may only enforce discipline-related school policies, rules, regulations, or procedures when a physical injury has occurred or to prevent a threat of physical injury. School resource officer is prohibited from inquiring into a student's immigration status. A school resource officer who is under investigation for excessive force must be reassigned and may not be assigned to another public school until the investigation has concluded with a finding of no excessive force. Beginning in September of this year, a local law enforcement agency that assigns individuals that assigns individuals to be school resource officers must choose one individual to be a supervisor who is required to oversee the work of the school resource officers in that individual's jurisdiction. That individual must have regular meetings with the school resource officer and with school personnel in order to ensure that the school resource officer is behaving properly and is well integrated into the community. The Center for School Safety is also required to adopt a training program for principals and administrators in the schools.
Alistair, you want to tell us what page you're on of the document?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on. So the bill reprint kind of breaks down at a certain point, but I'm on the second page of page 3 in paragraph 2 and paragraph 3. So in paragraph 3, you see that and this is going into the third page of page 3, that the specialized curriculum that must be developed for the training of school administrators must include training in de-escalation, mediation, the proper disciplinary roles of school resource officers, and restorative approaches to discipline, methods of conflict resolution, and crisis techniques. And then that training beginning in the following year, August 15th of the following year, will be made available to all school administrators. So that's probably a good place to stop, as that covers some new requirements of SROs and administrators.
Thank you, Alistair. And let me just say this. It's 9:45 at night. I want everybody to take just a deep breath real quick. It's a deep breath. This is the first time a lot of us are seeing this amendment. So I do want to make sure we take some time with it and people provide, some great input on it too. So we're here to listen to everyone's opinions, and we can make changes too. So I just want everybody to just take a deep breath. All right. All right. Delegate Eversole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The training that you referenced for SROs, of course, exists, and you're recommending it for administrators, which I think is an excellent suggestion. Since you've created a position of supervisor in the law enforcement group, that I think they should be included in that training as well. And I'm not sure I saw it. I was looking hard for it.
It's a little later in the bill.
Okay, well, I was on the section I was on, but they should definitely be also trained, because if they're going to supervise those people, they have to understand what training they had and maybe buy into that training too.
From my understanding, a lot of the supervisors do go through the training too, but just to make sure we added it here.
Do most of them have supervisors already, or are they? I mean, do many of the systems that have law enforcement have supervisors supervising the SROs, or is it just the chief of police, or generally? Or is there somebody who's specifically given that title or that assignment? Do we know? I like it. I think it's great. I just want to make sure that if we do assign them, they have that training as well. That's all.
Sorry, Delegate. It is in the bill, and I kind of glossed over it. It's the part right before the training that's provided to administrators. There's it's not as specific, but it requires that the center adopt a curriculum and train the school resource officer administrators as well.
Okay, thank you. But so by administrators, you didn't mean school administrators. You meant.
No, I did. There's two different
Okay.
sets of.
They're all there somewhere if I look hard enough, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to the current setup. I would
Well,
guess.
it's really just informational. I can survive without it. Thank you.
And we aren't requiring administrators to go through the training either. We are just offering it to the administrators to go through the training too.
You mean building level administrators?
Correct.
Okay, because we have two words for administrator here. I want to make sure that whoever
We're calling the supervisors, the people who oversee the SR
Okay.
supervisors.
I think they should be required to.
They are required, but
Excellent. Thank you.
school administrators are not required.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you, Alistair, for the clarification.
Yeah,
Delegate
good
Geiger.
clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate you bringing this bill forward. I've already told you there are parts of this bill that I think are absolutely beautiful, particularly with the behavioral health plan, safety plan for these schools. I do have a question about the criteria that's required to have a complaint lodged against an SRO and what the investigation procedure would look like. And you can see a scenario here, and I want to make sure that we're not setting this up inadvertently where, a different complaint could come in every day by someone who doesn't want the SRO there, and that SRO would be out all year. So is there more specificity about what those complaints have to look like to rise to that level of investigation where the SRO would be removed from the school, and how long that would take to be resolved?
Yeah, Delegate. The SROs are employees of the local law enforcement agencies, and they're assigned to these schools. So the complaint process is governed by the complaint process set forth in the public safety article. If I believe the speaker's bill passes into law, there is a provision in there that prevents malicious complaints against an officer and that makes sure that they are dismissed. So it would follow to the same standard as that, I believe.
Yeah, thank you for that, because obviously we don't do the public safety law in this committee, so I don't know it well. Are there any more examples you can give me, like what would qualify and what wouldn't, and what would be required? And then maybe from possibly
For a malicious
Sean
complaint?
Johnson. Yeah, for what would rise to the level of someone being taken out of the school, and then what the investigative process would look like. I know for teachers what it looks like, but it sounds like it wouldn't be the same.
It would be, again, that's not, look, I think what we're saying here is that if a police officer, if an officer or security personnel uses excessive force, they would be directly removed from it. And how it's defined is in current statute and current case law. And so we're not redefining it here. Even based on the particular jurisdiction, they all have different excessive force rules.
Certainly, I was thrown off by the word alleged. So that's what threw me off with asking for a more specific description of that.
Okay, we can tweak that to remove that. So
Thank
can
you.
make a change. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on this section? Yes, Delegate Rose.
Just to follow up on Delegate Guyton's question, and I guess one of my concerns is who is making the determination at the time? The principal? Like, let's say there's a scenario and a student says you're using excessive force, and they call their parent, and the parent calls the school. Like it just seems like this is, what is that process exactly?
So I think this is when they're under investigation. I believe we're talking about a complaint that rises through the normal channels of the local law enforcement complaint process. So it's under investigation through those channels, which exist in the way they exist now and might exist in a different way should that bill become law. I forget the bill number, but
Yeah, and we're not changing any of that here, any of those processes here. We're just saying that if they're under investigation for it, they should be removed from the school until it's resolved.
yeah, right here.
Well, so just as a follow-up then, to kind of go back to this new supervisor that they're hiring. So they're already supervised by law enforcement, by their law enforcement agencies, like in my case, my sheriff's office. So they're under his supervision. Now we're going to hire another, each county is going to have to hire another supervisor.
I think someone just could be assigned within. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not cutting you
Yeah,
off.
no, let me answer it. So, Delegate Rose, we're not changing, we're not adding a supervisor. We're saying that there should be one supervisor that oversees all of the SROs in the school, and they'll be trained by the center. And so what we're not changing any of that is just saying, hey, there should be a supervisor overseeing directly everyone, all the SROs. They should be trained in understanding what SROs do, and they should be responsible and check in with them routinely. We're not changing. We're not asking them to hire a new person. We're just saying that there should be one person. That's it.
So that makes sense to me, except for I'm a little confused because I thought that's what was already happening with the original SRO bill that we passed. And that was the whole purpose for the Center for School Security, or whatever we called it. I can't remember at the time. And everyone being involved in this entire program from back in 2018 was going to be under this Center for Excellence of School Security, or whatever it was. Alistair's laughing at me.
Sorry, I'm laughing with you, Delegate.
Yeah, so
It's the Center for School Safety. Okay.
Center for Cool. Okay. So my understanding was the whole purpose of setting up that center was to have a unified set of training that was supposed to be of the highest level. And so if we were already doing that, I mean, we passed it in 2018 and we were just getting it basically off the ground. We passed the bill, and then, I guess they had about 2019. So I guess I'm confused as to why, what is the problem? That's just my line of thinking. I guess that's not necessarily a question, it's just a concern of mine because
Yeah.
I feel like, sorry.
No, Delegate, I'm sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, that's it. I'm finished.
Okay, got it. So let me respond. So again, we're not changing any of that. We're just saying that there shall be one, and not everyone apparently is as great as your sheriff's department, right? That they already have one, a supervisor. So we want to make sure that there's a supervisor in for everyone that employs SROs or school security personnel. So right now that's not current law, but we are making it so that it happens, and that they check in with them routinely to make sure they're doing their jobs, because that's not always happening either. Okay, cool. Delegate Ebersol. And Alice, did you want to clarify anything on that?
No, I think that's right.
Yeah, I was just asking for a clarification, but I think you may have just answered it. I was working on actually getting the information. I don't think the School Safety Act required a supervisor.
Correct. No, it doesn't.
That's what we're really adding here. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And the supervisor is chosen by the local law enforcement agency. We're not assigning anybody new.
And it can be somebody who's currently employed, right? They just said your job is to do this in addition to some of the other stuff you do.
Correct. Yeah. And Alistair, can we go back to section C? Section C on this page, subsection 1I. I want to just make it clear that the original bill said that they can't be involved in routine discipline practices, correct? So under this language here, can you just explain how that works? And that because I think there's some some folks are misconstruing this as we're allowing, it's going against the original intent of the bill, but I think we're trying to define it more thoroughly versus it being so broadly defined in the original bill, right? So can you just describe that a little bit to make everybody feel comfortable with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this language is ensuring that the SROs are not to be involved with routine disciplinary matters, and that I think it tends to be things like, a food fight and like things we talked about in the course of HB 700. Kids arguing over Pokemon cards, something like that. If that rises to the level where there's a physical injury, however, or there's a need to prevent a physical injury, then it might not rise to the level of, something that's beyond the scope of the disciplinary procedures. But because the SRO is there and able to step in and prevent injury, we're giving them a slight exception to the otherwise general prohibition.
Great. Okay, any questions on that? Any questions from I want to go, Alice, I'm sorry, can I go back? I know I'm jumping around just a little bit, but I want to make something. Any questions on that? Does that make sense to everybody that we're still sticking to the routine discipline practices, which was the original intent of the bill? We're just making it clear that if there's physical injury or to prevent a threat of physical harm, that's also in the Code of Student Conduct, that's also in school discipline. So we just want to make it clear that we just want them we want to make it clear because there's some ambiguity in the original language of the bill. Any questions on that? Any questions on that from the advocates on that piece particularly? Ms. Ortiz. And Delegate Ebersol, can you mind running the meeting real quick? The alarm keeps going off in this hotel. I gotta check and see what's happening. Make sure I'm not.
You're going to be alive? Yes, I'll be happy to do that. I heard the chair call on Miss Ortiz. Where are you? I don't see your name.
Good evening, Jeanette
Or
Ortiz.
you popped to the top. I didn't see you up there. Okay, great.
Good evening, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative Policy Council for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. So the explanation that Vice Chair Washington gave is great. However, I think the concern is using the word discipline. SROs should not be involved in any discipline whatsoever of students. That's purely an administration function. And so I think other folks may have their hands up, but I think maybe more appropriate would just say an SRO may intervene, and then the list of, if there is physical altercation or whatever's the language that's in the amendment, as opposed to using the word discipline. The word discipline is very concerning and has a very particular meaning when it comes to student conduct and consequences and things of that nature. So maybe just saying that SRO may intervene.
Help us catch up, make sure that we're all on the same page here. Alistair, tell us what she's referring to here.
So we're all on,
No, I'm not.
Me.
Others are, but
Sorry.
I'm not.
okay,
Roll
so
around.
on page, the second page of page 3.
We're still
under
there, okay.
Subsection C1.
Right, school resource officer may only enforce disciplinary related to school policies, rules and regulations. And is everybody seeing that now? Do you know where we are? Great, well, then you're better than I am. And you're suggesting rather than discipline, Ms. Ortiz, what would you suggest there?
May only intervene, get rid of the rest as far as enforce all the way through procedures. And it would read, a school resource officer may only intervene when a physical injury has occurred or to prevent a threat of physical injury. And then the same language for the school security employee.
So you're seeing that as even a little less, when I read that as even a little less empowering for them, that they can't actually enforce discipline related policies. They can just.
And they shouldn't be. And I guess that's the point.
And that's your point. But I want to make sure that's what you're going for there.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if anybody else that's on MABE or PZAM want to jump in, but yeah, they should not be at all involved in the disciplinary policies and enforcing discipline. That's where the school administrator would come in. And
I'm going to hold on to that one and explain it to the chair when he comes back.
Yeah.
He's the boss.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Ms. Dell from MSEA, did you have something you wanted to say?
So yes, good evening, everyone. So to concur on that point, the issue around the discipline language can be a little bit dicey. Also, some of the language around, I would feel like defining physical injury physical injury could be someone got socked in the eye and got a black eye. Physical injury could be a bone is broken. And that level of ambiguity can be kind of treacherous. So you may want to kind of put a point on that. And then the whole notion of preventive threat of physical injury, that also can be really interesting. There are there's several precedent that exists in this space around very subjective interpretations of harm, of threat, et cetera. We've seen incidences where DOJ got involved in Meridian, Mississippi. They had a consent decree put on them because there were incidences where teachers and other educators were threatened by students' disrespect, for example.
So, Chair, if you let me follow this thread, so we can straighten it out. So what are you suggesting for number 2 there then?
So I'm suggesting that you may want to either be a little more specific around like great bodily injury or something that sort of that meets the level of severity that you're trying to get to.
Okay.
So that again, it's not a black eye versus a broken arm. And then the threat of physical injury, I think maybe something closer to like threat of great bodily harm or something to that effect.
So you're going a similar direction, Ms. Ortiz, in that you're looking for perhaps even more restrictive language.
Something that is, I think, is a little more clear, so that does not leave open objectivity to what is defined as discipline.
So hers was a little more less enabling at the end of C there, and then yours was a little more restrictive. And
well, no, I concur with what she's saying about.
But you wanted a little more restrictive language in number 2, is what I was saying.
Just some clarity around what, like, when we're talking about a physical injury.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Potato. I get what you're going for there.
I think that concurs with what Ms. Ortiz was saying, and others, I think, in the community. But if I'm wrong, I respectfully submit that I may not be exactly speaking in the same tone that they are.
All right.
This is Andrea Mansfield. Could I make a comment as well?
Hold on 1 second, Ms. Mansfield.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Alistair, were you able to get that comments?
Yes.
Folks? Okay. Ms. Mansfield?
Yes.
And on this
Thank you.
piece only.
Yes, on this piece. Yeah, and actually, I represent the Maryland Chiefs and Maryland Sheriffs Association, and actually, the concerns that they have are very similar to those that have already been raised. And I think, like honestly, I think they felt the original language in the bill was very clear and said that an SRO may not enforce disciplinary policies of the school system, because I think from their perspective, they should not be. That's not their role for being in the school. And I thought they felt the original language was clearer. I do think some of the suggestions that I've made would also clarify that a little bit further to address their issues. So thank you.
I appreciate you saying that because I was questioned by a lot of attorneys about that language that we originally had, and they came up with this language. So
really,
but I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody's thoughts on this. So and liking my original bill, so it makes me feel good. So thank you.
Glad I could help now.
Thank you. All right, so that's pretty clear. Does the members of the committee feel that way as well? You guys understand that? Everybody's good. Everybody. Yeah. Cool. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next section. And also let's go. I want to just go back to the supervisor. It does say one supervisor for all SROs. I think we want to make that maybe a little bit loose, more than just one, but there should be an SRO assigned to each. There should be a supervisor assigned to each SRO. Because obviously in my district, we have 30 of them, 32 of them. In Baltimore City, they have way more than that. And I know Anne Arundel County has a lot as well. So we might want to just expand that to saying they should have a supervisor that goes through this training and everything else. I think that should suffice on that piece. Cool. Okay, let's go to the next section. We got a lot of other stuff to talk about, and we are going to have a hard stop at 10:30, everybody. So.
Okay, so the next section, subsection D on the third page of page 3. This involves the requirements for school security employees that are new in this bill. Again, there's the same language about enforcing disciplinary matters. Additionally, there's the same language about inquiring into a student's immigration status. The local school system that employs a school security employee is required to establish a complaint process that's modeled on the Uniform Citizen Complaint Process that we were talking about a moment ago under the public safety article. And there's also a prohibition here for a school security employee who is alleged to have committed excessive force. That person is prohibited from working in a public school until the investigation is concluded. So parallel language, but different because here the employer is the school system and not the local law enforcement agency. So any questions on that?
And just so folks know that not all there are school jurisdictions that have SROs, and then there's some that have security personnel. There are some that have both, like my jurisdiction, and also Howard County also has both. My jurisdiction has arrest powers with these security personnel, which is the only ones in the state of Maryland that has arrest powers for security personnel. So any questions on this, and are there still, I guess the same concerns might exist with the security personnel with that language in there of defining the interactions or school discipline related matters. Okay, cool. Delegate Ebersol with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So school security personnel do operate differently, and I think if they don't have arrest capabilities or weapons, they tend to do discipline for administrators, frequently just getting kids to class on time and things like that. Are we saying here that we're going to reduce their role so they can no longer do that if they're in the building? And isn't it just possible that the school system will come up with a different name for them then? I mean, law enforcement is very clear that, who they are, but they could just give them a different title and hire them in to be, school policy enforcers or something like that. And so my general feeling is, although it's a little counter to what I think I maybe would, it makes me a little uncomfortable, but I think they often have a different role than police officers, especially if they're not uniformed, not armed, and also not able to arrest students.
So Delegate Ebersol, they actually are a defined group. They are school security employees means under this whole subtitle, an individual who is not a school resource officer employed to provide safety and security related services and governed by regulations adopted by the Maryland Center for School Safety. So I'm not sure what I'm not sure what the parameters of those regulations are off the top of my head, but I'm sorry, you're on mute, sir.
Yeah, I just said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, cool. That I guess that answered your question. Miss Stederett for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question about the definitions for a school resource officer versus a security employee. It sounds, based on what I just heard, that Baltimore City school police officers don't fit into either. Under the Safe to Learn Act in 2018, they would be considered school resource officers. But here, I thought they said the security employees, or excuse me, the school resource officers were those employed by the law enforcement agencies, but the security employees were employed by the locals, but they didn't have the same powers that my school police officers do. So in Baltimore City, as Delegate Smith has mentioned, is quite different. And we have a chief of police, we have an entire police force with central command. And so I'm not sure exactly how we would fall into this into this legislative bill.
So you're right, but you are covered under the definition of school resource officers explicitly, which this is all being amended into the Safe to Learn Act. So all those provisions still apply. So sorry, I was taking a shortcut speaking broadly about the other 23 jurisdictions in the state, but in Baltimore City, you're right. It's not an outside law enforcement agency that's lending people. It is, in fact, the Baltimore City School Police, I think.
Okay, thank you.
I remember that specifically being placed in there. I also advocated to have our security personnel placed in that definition too when this bill was being passed originally. So just so they all are covered under it and all are eligible for the funding that's available under here as well. So
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stederett. Okay, cool. Any other questions? I know some folks are still processing. But let's go to the next section, Mr. Johnston.
Yes, sir. So the next section is on page 4 of the reprint. And this is a new reporting requirement for the principal of a public school in which a school resource officer is employed. And this is, I'm sorry, not a reporting requirement. This is a behavioral health and safety action plan that the principal of those schools is going to have to design. So in consultation with teachers at the school, any school resource officers who are assigned to the school, or school security employees located at the school, school mental health personnel, students and parents, the principal is going to come up with a plan to create better behavioral health interventions, basically, and to reduce the number of clashing interventions with students. So to reduce the number of school-based arrests, the number of suspensions that happen, the number of referrals to the Department of Juvenile Services, the number of expulsions, and to increase the use of trauma-informed approaches to students experiencing distress or and generally working on positive behavioral health interventions. A plan that the principal forms in this manner must be submitted to the county board for approval, and at the start of each school year, the county board, beginning in the 2022 school year, the county board will approve the plan. The plan will then be published on the school's website. Are there any questions on that section?
Yes, please. Any questions on this section of it? from the members? Ms. Toret?
Yes, thank you again. I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Toret, am I saying your last name correctly?
It's direct. It's direct.
Direct.
You're just
Okay.
putting a little extra flair onto it.
I am, sorry.
I like So I was just looking at this section, and it gives me a little concern that we're already putting a lot on a principal's full plate with the behavioral health and mental and behavioral health plan, because currently I know under the Safe to Learn Act, we have each LAA must appoint a mental health coordinator. And also we have school assessment teams where there's school safety coordinators in each school. We also, under the blueprint, we have community schools where we have a community school coordinator that's coalescing and everyone's needs. And so it's a lot of people looking, and also we're getting more mental health dollars under the blueprint. So there's going to be plans developed. It seems to be a bit redundant with to have it here when it's in other areas of the law and other requirements I'm sorry, my cat is trying to step on my computer, and other requirements that already exist.
Yeah, go ahead, Alistair, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's well taken. I think the aim here is specifically to look at the interactions between how the school security employees or school resource officers are working in the schools and making sure that they're a functioning part of the school ecosystem and helping students. So I think that to that end, maybe there's a little too much verbiage, but sorry, go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, no, we talked about also that too, about there being a lot of verbiage in here too. But we also said that, if you're going to have a SRO, if you're, going to have a SRO, your question is not to be duplicative, right? Like there's some community schools that already have plans already out there that they're going to be developing. For what I say to that is that, well done, then you already have this plan put in place. But now how do you integrate SROs into that plan if you have them in there too? And what are their roles? And I think for Baltimore City, you got to remember that everybody has an integrated system like you guys have already, right? So a lot of jurisdictions don't have that currently. Whereas in our system, our SROs and our school security personnel barely work together. And there's no plan of them working in that school at all. So for me, I will want to make sure that if you're going to have these folks, there's a plan put in place and there's behavioral health services offered to students there too, and that there's a comprehensive plan. If you're having a community school, you're already going to accomplish that goal through the community schools effort, in which you'll be able to submit already. And that wouldn't be the problem. That wouldn't be a problem.
I just add that with the community schools, a lot of that would be developed by the community school coordinator in consultation with the principal, but the principal wouldn't necessarily be the driving force in developing the plan.
No, I mean, that's fair. I mean, but it's still the principal, the community schools coordinator still works for the principal, right? And still communicates with the principal about the plan of developing the community schools plan. So I don't think that's far-fetched to think that I think what we're saying here is that it's a school-based plan and not a county-wide plan, which some already have these county-wide plans that aren't useful most times for the SROs or for the security personnel, honestly. And so the idea here is to have a school-based plan, and that's not offered in every jurisdiction, and it's not offered when you go to a school that has 13 security personnel in the school, and there's no plan available for students in that school. Hope that makes sense to everybody. Ms. Toret. Delegate Jones. Oh, I'm sorry, Delegate Smith, you had your hand up first, I think.
Delegate Jones had her hand up first. I'll defer to my colleague.
Delegate Jones, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to see that Ms. Ortiz's hand is up, because I was curious on her take on this, and I was actually going to Ms. Storit's point regarding just the principal. If a community school coordinator was doing this in other places, could we not be as specific when we put it on the principal's plate? I take your point, Chairman, that you're saying, yes, the community school coordinator works for the principal, but I'm just, to the point that's made, if we're so specific in the law, potentially.
We can say it's school-based, a school-based plan, right?
Right.
That's-
Okay.
And that makes it a little bit more broad, where it's just not putting it on the shoulders of the principal, where it's like the plan is originated at the school itself.
Thank you, Chairman. And I was curious to hear from, obviously, Ms. Ortiz, as she is from my county. So thank you.
We'll definitely get there to Ms. Ortiz. Delegate Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so I'm just so happy to have this conversation. I can't believe I'm still thinking right now, but I am, and I'm just so thankful for everyone being here and shedding some light. So just to make sure I'm hearing clearly, I think what Delegate Jones kind of cleared up, kind of helped me, I just want to make sure to Mr. Rhett's point, if there's already some work that's been done, to your point, could that portfolio of, efforts be essentially serve as a proxy for a separate template, because it's meeting, you know what I'm saying, kind of the proof, the burden that you've actually created a plan?
Was that a question for someone else, or was that?
Oh, I didn't know, maybe you or Alistair. I didn't know if there, you know what I'm saying, like something that was equivalent to the kind of the spirit of what you would like to see at a school-based level generated. If there's already similar work product, you get what I'm saying, kind of.
It would be what Ms. Sturdat said, right? Like it's a community schools plan, right? That offers.
Is that okay?
Absolutely, that offers these services. But remember this. Not every school is a community school, right?
That's right. That's right.
Not every school is a community school. We have 260 schools in our jurisdiction, and 46 of them are state mandated, state funded community schools, right? So they're not going to have a community schools coordinator. They're not going to have a behavioral health specialist. Those types of resources. So we can't. Well, what I'm saying here is that I would like one of those plans to be created, but obviously that plan is pretty lengthy. And I'll just say this also, that the school system can create a template to be used for the schools themselves to fill out and complete using a community school coordinator, or using someone within the school to be able to do this work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the clarification.
You got it, definitely. Okay, I'm gonna go to Ms. Guyton, and then Delegate Guyton, and then I'm gonna call Ms. Ortiz. Sorry, Ms. Ortiz, I know your hand's been up for a while, but I want.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we're coming up close to the end point. I was just wondering, because I was also involved in at the MSDE liaison level with the Center for School Safety when it was first created in 2018. So that's one reason I'm really involved and interested in this. I appreciate Ms. Ortiz's comment that a lot of this seems like it's something that was already in statute by that act, because I think that's actually accurate. I wondered if we had any input, or if we had anyone on this call from the Center for School Safety to tell us like what parts of this are already being done, what parts are not. And I understand your point of, if it's a community school, then they're already doing a lot of this. But again, I would say most of them that have SROs are not community schools. And we don't want to make it so onerous for the principal, who's already overwhelmed, that they can't do the rest of their work. So I don't know if there's someone who could speak to either the principal's responsibility in this, and whether that's reasonable to expect, and how much may already be done, so that perhaps it's not as onerous as it seems.
Let me just respond to that real quick. So, if you're going to employ a school resource officer or school security personnel, you should take into account a plan and evaluation of providing safety at an adequate level. That's pretty serious if you're going to have a school resource officer there, and you should create a safety plan and a behavioral health plan for the school itself. If you think that's onerous, then maybe you shouldn't have a school resource officer, in my opinion. But you should create a plan. There should be a plan in place. And as far as the redundancy in this, I would think that maybe some of the trainings, I have a list of the trainings that a lot of the SROs go through at the schools, Center for School Safety. There are some pieces in here that they already do already. For instance, as restorative justice training, they already do at the Center for School Safety. So there's pieces in here that are done, but I would think that most of the stuff that we included in here are not done by currently. So a lot of it is not redundant, as you
Okay.
pointed out. But let's go to Miss Ortiz for her comments.
Thank you again. So to Delegate Jones's questions and to your, Mr. Vice Chair, your suggestion, I think school-based is definitely workable, much better than just saying the principal for all of the reasons that my colleague, Ms. Durrett, referenced before. And I think that that makes it clear that it's going to be a school specific plan, but it also allows for more collaboration with the school and the administration, the superintendent's administration, to provide assistance in developing these plans, because we're already doing some of these things or a lot of these things in other areas. And I think it makes for a more collaborative process, but also specific to the particular needs of a school. Thank you.
No, thank you, Ms. Ortiz, for that. And I think changing it to school-based is workable. And I think adding some language in there about developing a template could be helpful too. And, you know, obviously if there's resources already been used to develop these plans, again, job well done. That means you're already there almost. We just want it to go a little further to make sure that you include safety in that piece. So that sounds great to me. So thank you, Ms. Ortiz, for that. Any other questions on this section?
Yeah.
I think this is a great discussion, by the way. Delia Jones, you have a question?
I was saying thank you as well. I was giving the wave thank you to Ms. Ortiz. I apologize, sir.
Got it. No, all good. Okay. Any other comments on this section? Let's go to the next section. We're almost there.
Okay, so the next section is providing for different uses for the $10 million that is allocated from the school safety fund, rather than solely going to provide for the coverage of law enforcement or the hiring of school security employees. It can go to that, but it can also go to the hiring of school psychologists or the hiring of community school coordinators to develop a community school. Additionally, instead of going to both schools and law enforcement, it would go to schools to be redistributed to law enforcement if the school system chose to spend the funds in that manner.
So in this section, it provides options to be able to be used for behavioral health services, community schools, wraparound services, or providing services for SROs. If you want to use the money for SROs, you can continue to do that. That does not take it out from you being able to do that. If you want to change it and be able to have it used for behavioral health services, you are able to do that too. So and we're leaving it up to the LEAs, the school systems, to decide on this. Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering on the new language in this section, if we want to be as specific as saying just hiring, or if we would say hiring or contracting the mental health professionals, or on the second piece on the community school coordinators. I'm not sure to the extent that districts always hire in-house versus might contract out for some of those services.
I think that we got some some feedback from some folks saying that they didn't want us to put in contracting language in here. I would like to hear from one of the LEAs on what their position is on that. Would you want to use it for contracting? Should we do that, or should we use it for just hiring folks? Ms. Dove, and I think hiring, even if you hire, you can hire a subcontractor too, I would think, right? Ms. Dove?
So my comment sort of addresses a kind of an umbrella issue that sort of gets at what Delegate Polakovich-Carr is sort of talking about. Like, in an ideal world, the way that I kind of think about this and try to explain it to others is that what we need to do this well is to create healthy, safe, and supportive school communities, right? We need to get everybody that's in the building, that's involved with the kids, and all the people who are tangentially connected to them from the minute they leave home to the minute that they return home. All the people that are involved are part of a school community, right? And to the extent that we are building out those people to be trauma informed and trauma trained, to make sure that they know the kids well and have established relationships with them, that they are allowing the children to have voice and agency, and that they themselves have the same, like that they're doing kind of the restorative work, et cetera. Like that should be kind of the overarching purpose. So to the extent that we can have the members of that school community be people who currently work there, who are permanently working there, that are permanently connected to the kids, that's the ideal situation, right? Because when we have situations where folks come in and out and you don't have an established relationship, the kids are having to redo the trust building, the relationship building, and all the other things that are essential for making a school community work. So preference is always going to be on making sure that we are utilizing the folks that we currently have, but we know that the numbers in terms of pipeline are anemic, right? And we sort of need to get our arms around what that looks like. But ideally, we'd like to make sure that the folks who are doing the work that we are hiring, training, preparing, and hiring sufficient, adequate coverage for our behavioral and mental health folks. And effort should be made on our part in the state to get us there. We haven't been doing that. We need to do that. So the issue of contracting out won't be a thing if we start focusing on building the squad in the same way that we have to do for all the other educators. So I hope,
Thank you.
I hope that answers the question to a certain extent.
I think so. Thank you, Ms. Dove. We're at our 10:30 mark. So Alistair, let's go through the last section.
Okay, so I think the main there's a reporting requirement that in addition to the current reports on incidents of force, times that detention and searches of students occurred have to be reported. Additionally, there's a requirement that the center look at all the data that it's collecting on how SROs and school security employees are working in schools and come up with some best practices and train the school security employees and personnel in those best practices. And finally, there's a piece on the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center here. They were given a while ago the ability to look into how detention and assignment to juvenile services was affecting educational and economic outcomes, but there was never any funding put into that, and they have yet to do that. So there's some funding here attached to that on the understanding that they will start looking into how these things play out in the long run.
And so that's the piece that we're looking at to be able to track the school to prison pipeline in real time. And they're not doing that, although we authorize them to do it. So we're authorizing them to do it with this last section. Okay, with that said, any other questions or thoughts? Great, so what we'll do is meet tomorrow. I believe our time that we're meeting tomorrow is at 10 o'clock tomorrow. So just be prepared, everyone, to be able to, and please let me know if you have any changes, or we're going to take everything into account from everyone. You're putting Alistair to work. But I'm very thankful for what you've already sent me, guys. So we'll change some things and get us all in line. So thank you, everybody, for your feedback, and we'll take this up again tomorrow. So thanks, everybody. Have